The sound of the steam engine screeching halt echoed across the dusty platform of Willow Creek Station, as Savannah Mitchell clutched her 6-month-old daughter Emma tighter against her chest. The oppressive Texas heat of August 1875 beat down on her bonnet-covered head as she stood alone, the last passenger remaining on the wooden platform. "He ain't coming, madam," the station master said, not unkindly, as he swept the boards nearby. "Train's been here near an hour now." Savannah swallowed hard, fighting back the tears threatening to spill. Her betrothed, Mr. Harold Whitcomb, had arranged everything by post her journey from Boston, their marriage upon arrival, a new life for her and the baby she'd been forced to claim as her sister's orphaned child to avoid scandal. The telegram confirming her arrival date had been sent 2 weeks prior. "Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding," she said, her voice barely above a whisper as Emma fussed in her arms. "Or a delay of some sort." The station master's expression told her what she already knew deep in her heart. There was no misunderstanding. There would be no wedding. She had traveled 2,000 miles with a baby born out of wedlock, only to be abandoned in a town where she knew no one. "Is there a hotel nearby where I might wait?" she asked, trying to maintain her dignity. "The Willow Creek Inn's just down the way," but he hesitated, looking uncomfortable. "Might be best if you visit the sheriff's office first. Mr. Whitcomb left something for you there yesterday." Her heart sank further. "Yesterday?" "Yes, packed up his wagon and headed out after that. Said he was bound for California." Savannah felt her knees weaken, but she steadied herself against her trunk. With Emma whimpering from hunger and the sun beating down mercilessly, she wondered how her life had come to this desperate moment. "Madam, would you like me to fetch the sheriff for you?" Before she could answer, the thundering sound of hoofbeats approached, and a tall figure on horseback appeared at the edge of the platform. The man dismounted in one fluid motion, his spurs jingling as his boots hit the wooden planks. Dust covered his worn denim pants and the leather chaps protecting them. His face was partially obscured by a wide-brimmed hat, but she could see a strong jawline covered with several days' worth of beard. "Afternoon, Pete," the man called to the station master, his voice deep and resonant. "Any packages come in for the Double R today?" "Nothing today, Quentin, though we've got something of a situation here." Pete nodded toward Savannah. The cowboy Quentin turned his attention to her, and Savannah felt the intensity of his gaze as he assessed her and the child in her arms. His eyes were a startling blue against his sun-bronzed skin. "Madam," he said, tipping his hat, "you look like you could use some assistance." Emma chose that moment to break into a full cry, her tiny face reddening with the effort. Savannah bounced her gently, trying to soothe her while maintaining what little composure she had left. "I'm fine, thank you," she managed, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her. Quentin Ross had seen many things in his 30 years, but the sight of the young woman standing alone on the platform, clearly abandoned and trying desperately not to fall apart, stirred something within him. Her simple blue traveling dress was wrinkled from the journey, and wisps of auburn hair had escaped her bonnet, framing a face that might have been pretty if not clouded by distress. "Wit left her high and dry," Pete explained in a low voice. "Mail order arrangement gone bad." Quentin's jaw tightened. He'd never thought much of Harold Whitcomb, a man who talked big about his supposed cattle fortune but seemed to spend most of his time in saloons. Still, abandoning a woman and a baby was low even for him. "Sheriff's got a letter for her," Pete continued. "But I reckon it don't say nothing good." Emma's cries grew more insistent, and Savannah's attempts to quiet her were becoming increasingly desperate. "Let me hold you both," Quentin said, stepping forward with his arms outstretched. Savannah stared at him, confusion and wariness clear in her green eyes. "The baby needs shade and you look about ready to collapse," he explained gently. "My wagon's just around the corner. I can take you to the sheriff's office and we can sort this out proper." For a moment, Savannah hesitated. She had been raised never to accept help from strange men, but the reality of her situation was stark. She was alone in an unfamiliar town with a hungry, crying infant, no place to stay, and apparently no fiancé. "I don't even know your name, sir," she said, her Boston accent pronounced against his Western drawl. "Quentin Ross, madam. I run the Double R Ranch about 5 miles outside of town. Ask anyone around here, they'll vouch for me." Pete nodded in confirmation. "Quentin's good people, madam. One of the most respected ranchers in the county." With a deep breath, Savannah nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Ross. I would appreciate your assistance. I'm Savannah Mitchell and this is Emma." Quentin smiled, revealing a dimple in his right cheek. "Pleased to meet you both. Now, let's get you and little Emma out of this heat." With surprising gentleness for a man of his size, Quentin helped Savannah down from the platform, carrying her trunk with one hand while supporting her elbow with the other. His wagon was indeed just around the corner, a sturdy vehicle with a canvas cover providing blessed shade. After setting her trunk in the back, he turned to her. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to Emma. Reluctantly, Savannah handed over her daughter. The baby immediately stopped crying, seemingly fascinated by Quentin's beard and the silver concho on his hatband. He handled Emma with surprising skill, cradling her securely while helping Savannah onto the wagon seat. "You seem experienced with children," she observed as he handed Emma back to her and climbed up beside them. "Helped raise my younger sisters after our ma passed," he replied, taking up the reins. "Learned quick that babies like movement and new things to look at." As they pulled away from the station, Savannah felt a curious mixture of relief and apprehension. She had no idea what awaited her at the sheriff's office, but at least she wasn't standing alone in the heat anymore. The main street of Willow Creek unfolded before them, a dusty thoroughfare lined with false-fronted buildings typical of western towns. People moved about their business, women in calico dresses and men in work clothes, occasionally glancing curiously at the wagon as it passed. "It's not much," Quentin said, noting her observation, "but it's growing. We've got a proper school now, a church, even a doctor who doesn't double as the undertaker." Despite her predicament, Savannah found herself smiling slightly at his attempt at humor. "It seems quaint." "That's a polite way of putting it," he chuckled. "Boston, right? Your accent gives you away." "Yes," she admitted, "though I haven't much to return to there." Quentin didn't press for details, for which she was grateful. Instead, he pointed out buildings as they passed: the general store, the dressmaker's shop, the small lending library that had been established the previous year. All too soon, they arrived at a modest building with "Sheriff" painted above the door. Quentin helped her down from the wagon, again taking Emma while Savannah gathered her skirts. "I can wait out here if you prefer," he offered, but Savannah shook her head. "Please come in. I might need a witness to whatever news awaits me." Sheriff Morgan was a middle-aged man with a salt and pepper mustache and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. He looked up from his desk as they entered, his expression shifting from surprise to understanding as he took in Savannah and the baby. "You must be Miss Mitchell," he said, rising. "I've been expecting you." "Sheriff, this is Quentin Ross," Savannah introduced. "He was kind enough to bring me here from the station." The sheriff nodded to Quentin. "Good to see you, Ross." He turned back to Savannah. "I'm afraid I have some unfortunate news, Miss Mitchell. Mr. Whitcomb left this for you." He pulled an envelope from his desk drawer with trembling fingers. Savannah accepted it. Emma had fallen asleep against Quentin's chest, her little mouth slightly open, One tiny hand curled around his finger. The letter was brief and coldly formal. Miss Mitchell, I regret to inform you that circumstances have changed since our correspondence began. Upon reflection, I do not believe I am suited to the role of husband or father. I have decided to seek my fortune in California. Enclosed is $20 to assist you in returning east. Harold Whitcomb. Savannah read it twice before looking up, her face pale but composed. He's gone to California. He's not coming back. Sheriff Morgan cleared his throat uncomfortably. Yes, madam, left yesterday morning. Said he'd been planning it for some time. I see. She glanced at the $20 enclosed with the letter, not even enough for a train ticket halfway back to Boston. And I suppose he said nothing about alternative arrangements for me. No, madam, he did not. Quentin, who had been silent throughout the exchange, spoke up. Sheriff, Miss Mitchell will need accommodations. Is Mrs. Holloway still taking boarders? She is, but the sheriff hesitated. But she doesn't accept children, Savannah finished for him, recognizing the hesitation. I understand. Is there anyone in town who might? An uncomfortable silence followed, confirming her fears. Even in a growing town like Willow Creek, a single woman with a child and no visible means of support would be viewed with suspicion at best. Miss Mitchell could stay at the Double R, Quentin said suddenly. We've got the old foreman's cabin. It's small but clean. My sister Sarah's visiting from Denver. She could provide proper chaperonage. Savannah stared at him. Mr. Ross, I couldn't possibly impose. It's not an imposition, he interrupted gently. The cabin's sitting empty, and we could use an extra pair of hands around the place. Sarah's been complaining about having to cook for the hands. You're offering me employment? Savannah asked, scarcely believing what she was hearing. Room, board, and a fair wage, Quentin confirmed. At least until you decide what you want to do next. Sheriff Morgan studied Quentin with a slight frown. That's mighty generous, Ross. It's practical, Quentin replied. Miss Mitchell needs a place to stay, and I need someone to help Sarah with the cooking and mending. Seems like a simple solution to me. Savannah knew she should refuse. She knew nothing about this man beyond his name and occupation. Yet what choice did she have? $20 wouldn't get her far, and she had Emma to consider. If your sister approves, she said carefully, I would be grateful for the opportunity, Mr. Ross. Quentin nodded, a slight smile appearing beneath his beard. Then it's settled. We'll stop by the general store for any supplies you might need before heading out to the ranch. As they left the sheriff's office, Savannah felt a peculiar mixture of emotions: despair at being abandoned, relief at finding temporary shelter, and an inexplicable flutter of something else when Quentin smiled down at Emma, who had awakened and was now cooing at him. Mr. Ross, she said as he helped her back into the wagon, why are you doing this? He considered her question for a moment before answering. My ma always said that a person's character is revealed by how they treat those who can't do anything for them in return. He settled Emma back in her arms. Besides, every child deserves a safe place to sleep, and every mother deserves a chance to provide for her child. The simple sincerity of his words touched something deep within Savannah. For the first time since arriving in Willow Creek, she allowed herself to feel a glimmer of hope. The general store was a treasure trove of necessities and small luxuries. While Quentin discussed feed orders with the proprietor, Savannah selected a few modest items: soap, hairpins, and diapers for Emma. She was carefully counting out coins from her meager savings when Quentin appeared at her side. Add it to my account, Joe, he told the shopkeeper, ignoring Savannah's protests. And throw in some of those peppermint sticks and a tin of those tea biscuits from back east. Mr. Ross, I cannot allow you to consider it an advance on your wages, he said quietly. You can pay me back if it makes you feel better." Before she could argue further, the shop door opened and a well-dressed woman entered, her expression souring when she saw Quentin. "Mr. Ross," she acknowledged stiffly. "I thought you avoided town on supply days." "Mrs. Pemberton," Quentin replied, tipping his hat with exaggerated politeness. "I made an exception today." He turned to Savannah. "Miss Mitchell, this is Mrs. Pemberton, our local banker's wife. Mrs. Pemberton, Miss Savannah Mitchell, newly arrived from Boston." Mrs. Pemberton's gaze flicked dismissively over Savannah before landing on Emma. Her eyebrows rose sharply. "Indeed, and this would be my daughter," Savannah said firmly, lifting her chin. She had endured enough whispers and judgmental looks in Boston. She wouldn't cower here. "I see." Mrs. Pemberton's tone conveyed volumes of disapproval. "How interesting that you've already made Mr. Ross's acquaintance." Quentin stepped forward slightly. "Miss Mitchell will be working at the Double R, helping my sister with household duties." "How fortunate for her," Mrs. Pemberton replied, her emphasis making it clear she thought it was more fortunate for Quentin. "Well, I mustn't keep you. Good day." As she moved away, Savannah felt her cheeks burning with humiliation. "Perhaps this isn't the best arrangement after all," she whispered to Quentin. "I wouldn't want to damage your reputation." Quentin's expression hardened as he watched Mrs. Pemberton gossiping with the shopkeeper's wife. "Mrs. Pemberton's opinion matters about as much to me as a gnat's to a bull," he said bluntly. "And anyone else who wants to wag their tongues can save their breath. You ready to go?" His loyalty to a woman he just met was bewildering but oddly comforting. Savannah nodded, and they completed their purchases in silence. The journey to the Double R Ranch took them out of town and across rolling grasslands dotted with wildflowers. As they traveled, the landscape opened up in a way that made Savannah catch her breath. Having spent her life in the crowded confines of Boston, the vast openness of the Texas prairie was both terrifying and exhilarating. "It's beautiful," she murmured, more to herself than to Quentin. "It grows on you," he agreed. "First time I saw it, I thought it was the loneliest place on earth. Now I can't imagine being anywhere else." "How long have you lived here?" "Came out with my pa right after the war. I was 15. He started the ranch with 20 head of cattle and a dream." Quentin's voice softened with memory. "When he passed 5 years back, we had nearly 500 head. Now we're up to about 1,200. "That's impressive," Savannah said sincerely. "You must be very proud." "It's good, honest work," he replied. "Not always easy, but worth it." They crested a small rise, and the Double R spread out before them, a collection of well-maintained buildings nestled in a small valley. A 2-story house of white painted wood stood as the centerpiece, with a barn, bunkhouse, and several smaller structures arranged around it. In the distance, cattle grazed peacefully on green pastures. "Home," Quentin announced simply. As they approached, a woman emerged from the main house, shading her eyes against the sun. She was clearly Quentin's sister, the same striking blue eyes and determined chin, though her hair was a lighter brown than his dark locks. "Quen, you're back early," she called, then stopped short when she noticed Savannah and Emma. "And you've brought company." "Sarah, this is Miss Savannah Mitchell and her daughter, Emma," Quentin explained as he helped Savannah down from the wagon. "They had some trouble in town. Miss Mitchell, my sister, Sarah Ross." Sarah's expression shifted from surprise to warm welcome. "Well, hello there. And what a beautiful baby." She moved forward to get a better look at Emma, who gurgled happily in response to the attention. Quentin briefly explained the situation while Savannah stood awkwardly by, uncertain of her reception despite his assurances. To her relief, Sarah's face showed only sympathy and righteous indignation on her behalf. "That horrible man. Leaving you stranded like that, it's unconscionable." She turned to her brother. "Of course they must stay here. The foreman's cabin is perfect. I had it aired out just last week." "I've offered Miss Mitchell employment as well," Quentin added, "to help with the cooking and such while you're here." Sarah linked her arm through Savannah's. "Oh, thank goodness. I'm a terrible cook, if I'm being honest. The men are too polite to say anything, but I've seen them sneaking extra biscuits at breakfast because they know dinner will be dire." "Can you cook, Miss Mitchell?" "Please call me Savannah," she replied, warming to Sarah's friendly manner. "And yes, I'm quite proficient in the kitchen. I worked as a cook's assistant in Boston." "Then you're already more qualified than I am. Come, let me show you the cabin while Quentin deals with your trunk." The foreman's cabin was indeed small but clean and tidy. A central room contained a sturdy table, 2 chairs, and a small sofa. A compact kitchen area occupied one corner, with a cast iron stove and shelves for provisions. A door led to a bedroom furnished with a bed, a chest of drawers, and a small crib that looked recently dusted. "The crib was Quentin's and mine when we were babies," Sarah explained, following Savannah's gaze. "I thought Emma might use it. It's sturdier than it looks. Our father built it to last." Tears welled in Savannah's eyes at this simple kindness. "Thank you," she whispered. "Both of you have been so generous to strangers." Sarah squeezed her hand. "We've all been strangers somewhere, haven't we? Now, why don't you settle in and rest? Dinner's at 6 in the main house, but don't worry about helping today. You've had quite an ordeal." Left alone with Emma, Savannah sat on the edge of the bed and finally allowed herself to cry tears of relief, exhaustion, and lingering fear about what the future might hold. Emma watched her with solemn eyes before reaching up to pat her wet cheek with a chubby hand, as if offering comfort. "We'll be all right, sweet girl," Savannah whispered, kissing her daughter's fingers. "Somehow, we'll be all right." A soft knock at the door some time later roused Savannah from where she'd fallen asleep with Emma in her arms. Night had fallen, and the cabin was dark except for a sliver of moonlight through the window. "Miss Mitchell," Quentin's voice came through the door. "Sarah sent me to fetch you for dinner. Are you all right?" "Just a moment," she called, hastily straightening her dress and hair before lighting the lamp by the bed. When she opened the door, Quentin stood there with a covered basket in his hands. "I thought you might need these," he said, holding out the basket. Inside were diapers, a small jar of applesauce, and a soft flannel blanket. Sarah said babies need lots of things. The thoughtfulness of the gesture nearly undid her composure again. "Thank you. This is very kind." "It's nothing," he demurred, then gestured toward the main house, its windows glowing warmly in the darkness. "Dinner's ready when you are." The main house was comfortably furnished with a mixture of well-crafted pieces and homey touches: braided rugs, quilts draped over chairs, and shelves lined with books. The dining room table was set for 3, with a high chair pulled up beside one place. "The hands eat in the bunkhouse," Sarah explained as she brought in a platter of roast chicken. "Unless it's a special occasion, makes for quieter meals." Dinner was a surprisingly comfortable affair. Sarah kept the conversation flowing with tales of her life in Denver, where she worked as a schoolteacher, while Quentin occasionally interjected with gentle teasing or clarifications. They asked Savannah questions about Boston, but tactfully avoided inquiring about her circumstances or Emma's father. It wasn't until after the meal, when Sarah had taken Emma to show her the collection of small wooden animals Quentin had carved over the years, that Savannah found herself alone with her host. "Your sister is lovely," she said, helping him clear the dishes despite his protests. "You're fortunate to have each other." "She's a pistol," he agreed with obvious affection. "Smart as a whip, too. Could have married a dozen times over, but she's got her heart set on making something of herself first. And you, Savannah ventured. No wife waiting in the wings. A shadow crossed his face. There was someone once. It didn't work out. The finality in his tone discouraged further questions. Instead, she asked about the ranch, and he brightened, explaining the seasonal rhythms of cattle raising, the challenges of weather and market prices, and his hopes for expanding their operation. "I'm boring you," he said suddenly, noticing her stifling a yawn. "Not at all," she assured him. "It's fascinating. I've just had a rather overwhelming day." His expression softened. "Of course. Let me walk you back to the cabin." Outside, the night was alive with sounds Savannah had never heard in the city: crickets, distant coyotes, the soft lowing of cattle. Above them, stars scattered across the sky in numbers that staggered the imagination. "I've never seen so many stars," she breathed, stopping to look up. Quentin paused beside her, his face tilted toward the heavens. "One of the best things about living out here. Makes a person feel small and big all at once, doesn't it?" "Yes, exactly that," she agreed, surprised by his poetic observation. They stood in companionable silence for a moment before he spoke again. "Miss Mitchell, Savannah, I want you to know that you're welcome here for as long as you need. No expectations beyond the work we discussed." She turned to look at him, his features illuminated by moonlight. "Why are you helping me, truly? You must know how it looks taking in a strange woman with a child." "I suppose I do," he acknowledged, "but I've never much cared what people think." And as for why, he considered for a moment. "Because it was the right thing to do, and because when I saw you standing there at the station trying so hard to be brave, something told me you were worth helping." His honesty disarmed her. "I don't know what to say except thank you." "You don't need to say anything. Just get some rest. Tomorrow's soon enough to figure out what comes next." As she watched him walk back to the main house, Savannah felt an unfamiliar warmth spreading through her chest, the first stirrings of hope taking root in soil she had thought barren. The next morning dawned clear and bright, with sunlight streaming through the cabin windows. Savannah awoke to find Emma already awake in her crib, contentedly playing with her toes. After dressing them both and tidying the cabin, she made her way to the main house, determined to earn her keep. She found Sarah in the kitchen, staring forlornly at a bowl of lumpy batter. "Oh, thank goodness," Sarah exclaimed upon seeing her. "Please tell me you know how to make biscuits that don't double as doorstops." Savannah laughed and rolled up her sleeves. "Let me see what I can do." By the time Quentin returned from his early morning rounds, the kitchen was filled with the aroma of fresh biscuits, eggs, and coffee. He stopped in the doorway, his expression one of pleasant surprise as he took in the scene: Savannah at the stove, Emma playing on a blanket nearby, and Sarah setting the table. "Something smells mighty fine," he said, removing his hat and hanging it on a peg by the door. "Savannah is a miracle worker," Sarah declared. "Wait until you taste these biscuits." Breakfast was indeed a revelation compared to Sarah's previous efforts. Quentin ate with appreciative enthusiasm, complimenting Savannah on each dish. "If you cook like this for dinner, too, the hands might revolt if you ever leave," he said, helping himself to another biscuit. "I'll do my best not to disappoint," she replied, pleased by his approval. After breakfast, Savannah insisted on taking over the kitchen duties entirely, freeing Sarah to pursue her own interests. She spent the morning baking bread and preparing stew for the evening meal, with Emma contentedly watching from her makeshift play area. Around midday, Sarah appeared with a proposition. "I need to ride into town for supplies. Would you like to come along? It might be good for you to get to know the place a bit better." Savannah hesitated, remembering Mrs. Pemberton's cold reception. "I'm not sure I'd be welcome." Nonsense. Sarah dismissed her concern with a wave. Mrs. Pemberton is just one old biddy. Most folks in Willow Creek are decent enough once they get to know you. Reluctantly, Savannah agreed. She changed Emma into a clean dress and donned her own best day dress, a modest blue cotton with white piping that had seen better days, but was still presentable. The ride to town was pleasant, with Sarah pointing out landmarks and sharing local history. Unlike her brother, who was comfortable with silence, Sarah filled every moment with cheerful chatter. "Quentin mentioned you worked as a cook's assistant in Boston," she said as they approached the town. "Was that at a restaurant or a private home?" "A boarding house for young ladies," Savannah replied. "I lived there for several years after my parents died." "I'm sorry about your parents," Sarah said sincerely. "Losing ours was the hardest thing Quentin and I ever faced." "How old were you?" 16 when my father passed, 18 when I lost my mother." Savannah didn't add that her mother had died of grief as much as consumption, fading away after her husband's fatal accident at the shipyard where he'd worked. "And then you came west," Sarah prompted. Savannah hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "Yes, eventually. There were limited opportunities for me in Boston." Sarah's perceptive gaze suggested she understood more than Savannah was saying, but she didn't press. "Well, I'm glad you found your way to us, however circuitous the route." The town was busy with midday activity when they arrived. Sarah's friendly greetings to everyone they passed helped ease Savannah's anxiety somewhat, though she noticed curious glances directed their way. Their first stop was the general store, where Sarah introduced her properly to Joe, the proprietor, and his wife, Martha. To Savannah's relief, they were cordial, especially after Sarah mentioned her cooking skills. "We get so tired of bachelor cooking when we visit the Double R," Martha confided. "Quentin's a fine rancher, but that man could burn water." As they moved about town, completing errands, Savannah began to relax slightly. Not everyone was as welcoming as the storekeeper and his wife, but most people were at least polite. Emma, wide-eyed and smiling at everyone, proved to be an excellent ambassador. They were just leaving the post office when a commotion further down the street caught their attention. A group of cowboys had emerged from the saloon, laughing raucously. One of them spotted Sarah and called out, "Miss Ross, come have a drink with us, pretty lady." Sarah ignored them, taking Savannah's arm to steer her toward their wagon. But the men weren't easily discouraged. Two of them broke away from the group and intercepted their path. "Now don't be unfriendly," said the taller of the two, his words slightly slurred. "We're just being neighborly." His gaze shifted to Savannah, narrowing as he took in Emma in her arms. "Who's your friend?" "This is Miss Mitchell," Sarah said coolly. "Now if you'll excuse us, gentlemen, we need to be on our way." "Mitchell," the man frowned. "Ain't you the one who got left at the station? Whitcomb's mail-order bride?" Savannah felt her face flame with embarrassment as several passers-by turned to look. "That's none of your business, Frank Dawson," Sarah snapped. "Now step aside." Frank grinned, revealing tobacco-stained teeth. "Heard Whitcomb took one look at you and that bastard baby and decided California was a better prospect." He leaned in closer. "Can't say I blame him, but if you're still looking for a husband, I might be persuaded to." His words were cut off as a large hand grabbed him by the collar and yanked him backward. Quentin Ross stood there, his expression thunderous as he shoved Frank away from the women. "Apologize," Quentin said, his voice deceptively quiet. Frank, sobering quickly at the sight of the much larger rancher, raised his hands. "Now, Ross, I was just having some fun. Apologize to the ladies, or I'll introduce your face to the dirt," Quentin repeated, his stance making it clear he was perfectly willing to follow through. "Sorry, Miss Ross, Miss Mitchell," Frank muttered, not sounding particularly sincere. "No offense meant. Get back to the saloon," Quentin ordered. "And if I hear you've been disrespecting either of these ladies again, a sore jaw will be the least of your worries." As Frank and his companion slunk away, Quentin turned to Savannah and Sarah. "Are you all right?" "We're fine," Sarah assured him. "Though your timing is impeccable as always." Quentin's gaze was on Savannah, who was trembling slightly. "Savannah, I'm all right," she managed, though her voice wavered. "Just startled." His expression softened. "Let me escort you both back to the ranch. I've finished my business here anyway." As they walked toward the wagons, Savannah was acutely aware of the stares following them. Word of her situation had clearly spread throughout the small town. She wondered if coming to Willow Creek with Quentin and Sarah had been a mistake after all. "Don't let them get to you," Quentin said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. "Small towns run on gossip, but it burns out quick when there's nothing to fuel it." "And if there is?" she asked, equally quiet. He glanced down at her, his blue eyes steady. "Then you face it with your head high, knowing your true worth isn't measured by wagging tongues." Something in his words, or perhaps the conviction behind them, steadied her. She nodded, straightening her shoulders as they continued down the street. The return journey to the Double R was subdued. Emma, picking up on the tension, fussed in Savannah's arms until Sarah suggested moving her to the back of the wagon where she could lie down more comfortably. Once the baby was settled, Sarah climbed in beside her, leaving Savannah to ride with Quentin. They traveled in silence for a while before Quentin spoke. "I'm sorry about what happened in town. Frank Dawson's a troublemaker when he drinks." "It wasn't your fault," Savannah replied, keeping her gaze on the road ahead. "And he wasn't entirely wrong, was he? I was left at the station." "I am unmarried with a child." Quentin's hands tightened on the reins. "That doesn't give anyone the right to speak to you that way." "Perhaps not, but it's the reality I face. My presence at your ranch will only invite more gossip, more judgment. I should find another arrangement as soon as possible." "Is that what you want?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. Savannah finally looked at him. "What I want is irrelevant. I need to think practically for Emma's sake." "With all due respect, that's not an answer," Quentin persisted. "Do you want to leave the Double R?" The question caught her off guard. Did she want to leave? In just one day, the ranch had begun to feel like a haven, a place where she could breathe freely for the first time in months. "No," she admitted quietly. "But what I want and what's best aren't always the same thing." Quentin considered this. What if they could be? What if staying at the Double R is both what you want and what's best for you and Emma? How could it be? You saw how people reacted. That will only get worse over time. "People will talk regardless of where you go," he pointed out. "At least at the ranch, you have Sarah and me to stand with you, and the hands respect my judgment. They won't give you any trouble." His confidence was reassuring, but Savannah couldn't shake her doubts. "You hardly know me, Mr. Ross. Why are you so determined to help?" Quentin was silent for so long that she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and reflective. "When I was a boy, before we came west, my mother took in a young woman who was in trouble, pregnant and unmarried, abandoned by the man who'd promised to marry her." He kept his eyes on the road, but Savannah could see the muscle in his jaw working. "The town turned against my mother for it, called her all manner of things. But she stood firm. She said that turning away someone in need was a far greater sin than helping them, no matter what others thought." "What happened to the woman?" Savannah asked softly. "She stayed with us until her baby was born, then moved on to stay with relatives out west. She wrote to my mother for years after." He glanced at Savannah briefly. "I was too young to understand all of it then, but I never forgot how my mother stood up to an entire town for what she believed was right. The story touched Savannah deeply. "Your mother sounds like a remarkable woman." "She was," he agreed simply. "So when I saw you standing there at the station, holding Emma and trying so hard to be brave, I guess I heard my mother's voice telling me what to do." Savannah felt tears prickling behind her eyes. "Thank you for sharing that with me, and for everything else." Quentin nodded, seeming slightly embarrassed by his own openness. "All I'm saying is, don't make any hasty decisions based on Frank Dawson and his ilk. Give the double R a chance. Give yourself a chance." As the ranch came into view, Savannah found herself nodding. "All right. I'll stay, at least for now." The smile that lit Quentin's face at her words stirred something warm and unfamiliar in her chest, something that felt dangerously like hope. The next few weeks established a routine that brought unexpected comfort to Savannah's life. She rose early each morning to prepare breakfast for Quentin and the ranch hands, then spent her days managing the household alongside Sarah. Emma thrived in the fresh air and constant attention, growing chubbier and more alert by the day. Savannah discovered she had a talent for ranch cooking, adapting her boarding house recipes to hearty meals that satisfied hungry cowboys. The hands, initially wary of the newcomer, warmed to her quickly when they tasted her cooking. Soon, they were tipping their hats respectfully whenever they encountered her around the ranch. Sarah proved to be a true friend, sharing stories and laughter as they worked together. She taught Savannah about life on the ranch, which plants were good for medicine, how to spot a coming storm in the sky, the names of all the horses in the stable. In return, Savannah shared her knowledge of Eastern fashions and literature, subjects that fascinated the younger woman. "I've been thinking," Sarah said one afternoon as they hung laundry behind the main house. "The harvest dance is coming up in 2 weeks. You should come with us." Savannah stiffened slightly. She hadn't returned to town since the incident with Frank Dawson. "I don't think that would be wise." "Nonsense," Sarah insisted. "It's the biggest social event of the season. Everyone will be there, music, dancing, food. It's wonderful fun." "Everyone is precisely the problem," Savannah pointed out. "I doubt I'd be welcome." Sarah pinned a shirt to the line with unnecessary force. "Let them try to make you unwelcome. Besides, you'll be with us. No one would dare be rude." "It's kind of you to suggest it, but Quentin will be disappointed if you don't come," Sarah interrupted, her expression innocent but her eyes shrewd. "He's been looking forward to it." Savannah felt her cheeks warm. "Has he said so?" "Not in so many words," Sarah admitted, "but I know my brother. He's been spending an awful lot of time making sure you're comfortable here." It was true. Despite his busy schedule managing the ranch, Quentin made time each day to check on Savannah and Emma. Sometimes it was just a brief visit to the kitchen to sample whatever she was baking. Other times, he lingered after dinner, entertaining Emma while Savannah cleared the table, or joining her on the porch in the evening to point out constellations in the night sky. These quiet moments had become the highlight of Savannah's days, though she tried not to examine too closely why that might be. "I'll think about it," she promised Sarah, who grinned triumphantly. Later that evening, as Savannah sat on the porch of her cabin, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, the sound of approaching footsteps made her look up. Quentin appeared, carrying a small wooden object in his hands. "Evening," he greeted her. "Mind if I join you?" "Please do," she replied, gesturing to the empty chair beside her. Emma just fell asleep. He settled into the chair with a sigh of contentment. "Best time of day, isn't it? Work's done, night's still young, and there's nothing but possibilities ahead." Savannah smiled at his poetic observation. "You're quite the philosopher, Mr. Ross." "Quentin," he corrected gently. "After all this time, I think we can dispense with formalities, don't you?" "Quentin," she agreed, liking the way his name felt on her tongue. He held out the wooden object he'd been carrying, a small, intricately carved horse. Made this for Emma. Thought she might like it when she's a bit older. Savannah accepted it, running her fingers over the smooth contours. The craftsmanship was impressive, every detail lovingly rendered. "It's beautiful, thank you. It's nothing," he demurred. "Keeps my hands busy in the evenings." "Sarah mentioned the harvest dance," Savannah said after a comfortable silence. "She seems determined that I should attend." Quentin chuckled. "Sarah could convince a fish to climb a tree if she set her mind to it. But she's right, the dance is quite an event. Good food, good music. The whole county turns out for it." "And you think I should go?" she asked, watching his profile in the fading light. He turned to look at her, his expression serious. "I think you should do whatever makes you comfortable, but yes, I'd like it if you came. Very much." The simple honesty of his statement warmed her more than any elaborate compliment could have. "Then I'll come," she decided. "Though I haven't anything suitable to wear." "Sarah's already thought of that," he admitted with a grin. "She's planning a trip to town tomorrow to visit the dressmaker. Says it's high time you had something new." Savannah shook her head, both touched and exasperated by their generosity. "I can't keep accepting charity. It's not charity," he interrupted firmly. "You've more than earned your keep here. The hands say they've never eaten so well, and Sarah claims you've saved her from domestic disgrace. Consider it a bonus for exceptional service." His teasing tone made her smile despite her reservations. "You're impossible to argue with, Quentin Ross, so I've been told," he agreed cheerfully. "Usually by Sarah, and usually right before she wins the argument anyway." Their laughter mingled in the twilight air, creating a moment of perfect harmony that Savannah wished could last forever. The following day, Sarah practically dragged Savannah to town, Emma in tow, for a visit to Mrs. Caldwell's dressmaking shop. The dressmaker, a plump, friendly woman in her 50s, welcomed them warmly. "Miss Ross, always a pleasure, and this must be Miss Mitchell and little Emma that I've heard so much about." Savannah tensed, wondering what exactly the woman had heard, but Mrs. Caldwell's smile seemed genuine. "Sarah tells me you're in need of a new dress for the harvest dance," Mrs. Caldwell continued, already pulling out pattern books. "Something special, I think." "Nothing too elaborate," Savannah protested. "Something modest and practical." "Modest, yes, practical perhaps." "But definitely special," Sarah insisted. "This is your first social event in Willow Creek. You should make an impression." For the next hour, they pored over patterns and fabric samples. Eventually, they settled on a design, a gown of deep green cotton with black piping and a modest bustle. The color, Mrs. Caldwell declared, would complement Savannah's auburn hair and fair complexion perfectly. "I can have it ready by next Thursday," the dressmaker promised as she took Savannah's measurements. "Just in time for the dance on Saturday." As they left the shop, Savannah felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. It had been so long since she'd attended a social event, longer still since she'd looked forward to one. "You're going to look beautiful," Sarah predicted as they made their way back to the wagon. "Quentin won't be able to take his eyes off you." "Sarah," Savannah protested, glancing around to ensure no one had overheard, "don't say such things." Sarah's expression turned serious. "Why not? It's true. My brother admires you greatly, Savannah. Surely you've noticed." Of course she'd noticed. The way his gaze lingered on her when he thought she wasn't looking. The small kindnesses he showed her daily. The gentle way he handled Emma, as if the child were precious to him personally. "Even if that were true," Savannah said carefully, "you know why nothing could come of it." "Because of Emma," Sarah guessed. "Quentin doesn't care about that. He's not like other men." "It's not just Emma," Savannah admitted, lowering her voice. "There's More to my story that I haven't shared. Sarah's expression softened. Whatever it is, Savannah, it won't matter to him. Not if he cares for you. You can't know that, Savannah said, her throat tight with emotion. I know my brother, Sarah replied simply. Better than anyone, trust me on this. The day of the harvest dance arrived with perfect early autumn weather, crisp and clear, with just enough breeze to rustle the changing leaves. The entire ranch was abuzz with anticipation, the hands finishing their chores early to have time to clean up and don their best clothes. In her cabin, Savannah stood before the small mirror, hardly recognizing herself. The green dress fit perfectly, emphasizing her slender waist and bringing out the highlights in her hair, which she had arranged in a simple but elegant style atop her head. It had been so long since she had dressed for a social occasion that the woman in the mirror seemed like a stranger, someone from her past life in Boston, before everything had changed. A knock at the door startled her from her reverie. "Come in," she called, expecting Sarah. Instead, Quentin appeared in the doorway, wearing a clean black suit that transformed him from rugged rancher to polished gentleman. He stopped short when he saw her, his expression one of stunned appreciation. "Savannah," he said softly, "you look beautiful." She felt a blush rise to her cheeks. "Thank you, you look quite handsome yourself." They stood for a moment, simply looking at each other until Emma's coo from her crib broke the spell. "I came to see if you were ready," Quentin said, clearing his throat. "The wagon's all set." "Nearly," she replied, turning to lift Emma from her crib. The baby was dressed in a new white dress with a tiny green ribbon that matched Savannah's gown. "I just need to gather Emma's things. Mrs. Torres has agreed to watch Emma tonight," Quentin informed her, referring to the cook's wife who lived in a small house near the bunkhouse. "She has grandchildren Emma's age and she's very experienced." Savannah hesitated. She had never been separated from Emma before. "I'm not sure, it's just for a few hours," Quentin assured her. "And the dance is no place for a baby too loud, too many people. Mrs. Torres will take good care of her, I promise." After a moment's consideration, Savannah nodded. "You're right, of course. It's just difficult to leave her." "I understand," he said gently. "We can check on her during the evening if you'd like." His consideration touched her deeply. "Thank you." After settling Emma with Mrs. Torres, who cooed over the baby in rapid Spanish and shooed them away with assurances that all would be well, they joined Sarah in the waiting wagon. The ride to town was filled with Sarah's excited chatter about who would be at the dance and which of the local young men she hoped might ask her to dance. The town hall had been transformed for the occasion. Lanterns hung from the rafters, casting a warm glow over the space. Tables laden with food lined one wall, while a small band set up in the corner. Already, the room was filling with people in their finest clothes, a buzz of conversation and laughter filling the air. Savannah felt a moment of panic as they entered. What had seemed like a good idea at the ranch now felt like a terrible mistake. Conversations paused as people noticed their arrival, and she could feel curious gazes following her movements. "Ignore them," Quentin murmured, his hand warm and steady at the small of her back. "They'll find something else to talk about soon enough." He guided her through the crowd to a table where they could set down their contribution to the feast, Savannah's apple pies, which had already become legendary among the ranch hands. Several people stopped to greet them, most with genuine warmth, though a few cast speculative glances between Quentin and Savannah. Sarah was quickly swept away by a group of young women her age, leaving Savannah and Quentin standing somewhat awkwardly by the refreshment table. "Would you like some punch?" he offered. "Yes, thank you," she replied, grateful for the momentary reprieve as he moved away. Well, if it isn't Miss Mitchell." Savannah turned to find Mrs. Pemberton approaching, resplendent in a burgundy gown that screamed Eastern fashion. The banker's wife was accompanied by a tall, distinguished-looking man who Savannah assumed was Mr. Pemberton. "Good evening, Mrs. Pemberton," Savannah greeted politely. "I must say, I'm surprised to see you here," Mrs. Pemberton said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Such events are usually reserved for established members of the community." "Miss Mitchell is here as my guest," Quentin said, returning with 2 cups of punch and handing one to Savannah. "Evening, Richard," he added to Mr. Pemberton, who nodded in return. "Yes, we've heard all about your arrangement," Mrs. Pemberton said, her tone making the words sound scandalous. "Quite charitable of you, Mr. Ross." Quentin's expression hardened. "There's nothing charitable about it. Miss Mitchell is an excellent cook and housekeeper. The Double R is fortunate to have her." "Indeed, Mrs. Pemberton raised an eyebrow. "And is that all she is to you? Your housekeeper?" Savannah felt her face flame with embarrassment and indignation. Before Quentin could respond, Mr. Pemberton placed a restraining hand on his wife's arm. "Victoria, I believe the mayor is trying to get our attention," he said firmly, though Savannah could see no such signal from across the room. "Please excuse us, Mr. Ross, Miss Mitchell. Enjoy your evening." As they moved away, Quentin turned to Savannah, his expression troubled. "I'm sorry about that. Mrs. Pemberton has always had a sharp tongue." "It's not your fault," Savannah assured him, though her hands trembled slightly around her cup. "Perhaps coming tonight was a mistake after all." "Don't let her win," Quentin said, his voice low and intense. "That's what she wants, to drive you away, to make you feel unwelcome. Don't give her the satisfaction." The fierceness of his defense steadied her. "You're right," she agreed, straightening her shoulders. "I won't." His smile of approval warmed her from within. "Good. Now, I believe they're about to start the dancing. Would you do me the honor, Miss Mitchell?" He held out his hand, and after only a moment's hesitation, she placed hers in it. "I would be delighted, Mr. Ross." The band struck up a lively tune, and Quentin led her onto the dance floor. Savannah had learned the basics of dancing during her brief season in Boston society, before her father's death had ended such frivolities. She was pleasantly surprised to discover that Quentin was an accomplished dancer, leading her confidently through the steps. "You dance very well," she commented as they circled the floor. "My mother insisted," he replied with a grin. "Said no son of hers would stomp around a dance floor like a wounded buffalo." The image made her laugh, drawing curious glances from nearby dancers. "I can't imagine you ever being clumsy. You didn't see me at 14, all arms and legs and no idea what to do with them." His hand was warm and steady at her waist as he guided her through a turn. "You're quite graceful yourself." "Thank you, though it's been years since I've danced." "You couldn't tell," he assured her, his blue eyes warm with admiration. As the evening progressed, Savannah began to relax and enjoy herself. Not everyone was as welcoming as she might have hoped, but many people were friendly, asking about her life at the Double R and complimenting her on her pies. Quentin remained attentive throughout, never straying far from her side except when Sarah dragged him away for a sibling dance. During one such interlude, Savannah found herself approached by Sheriff Morgan, who tipped his hat politely. "Evening, Miss Mitchell. You're looking well. Ranch life seems to agree with you." "Thank you, Sheriff. It does indeed." He glanced around to ensure they wouldn't be overheard before continuing in a lower voice. "I thought you might like to know I received word from California last week. Seems Mr. Whitcomb has run afoul of the law out there, tried to swindle some miners in a fake land deal." Savannah wasn't sure how to respond. "I'm sorry to hear that," she said finally. The sheriff shrugged. "Thought you might find it relevant. Given how things turned out, you might have dodged a bullet with that one." As he moved away, Savannah considered his words. Would her life have been better if Harold Whitcomb had met her at the station as promised? She would have had the security of marriage, yes, but at what cost? A husband who saw her and Emma as burdens, who might have continued his dishonest ways, who might even now be sitting in a California jail. Her gaze sought out Quentin, who was laughing at something Sarah had said as they finished their dance. No, she decided. Things had worked out exactly as they should have. When Quentin returned to her side, his face was flushed from dancing and his eyes bright with enjoyment. Having a good time? He asked. Yes, she answered truthfully. Better than I expected. Would you like to step outside for some air? It's getting rather warm in here. The night air was cool and refreshing after the stuffiness of the crowded hall. They walked a little way down the main street, which was quiet except for the muffled sounds of music and laughter from the dance. I wanted to apologize again for Mrs. Pemberton, Quentin said as they strolled. Her implication was entirely inappropriate, but not entirely unfounded, was it? Savannah asked quietly, coming to a stop beneath a large oak tree at the edge of town. People talk, Quentin. They see a single woman living on your property, working in your home. They draw conclusions. He turned to face her, his expression serious in the moonlight. Let them talk. I know the truth, and so do you. And what is the truth? She asked, her heart beating faster. Quentin took a step closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of darker blue in his eyes. The truth is that I didn't offer you a place at the Double R out of charity or any improper motive. I did it because it was the right thing to do. He paused, then added more softly. And because from the moment I saw you at that station, trying so hard to be brave for Emma's sake, I couldn't bear the thought of you facing the world alone. Savannah's breath caught in her throat. Quentin, let me finish, he said gently. I know you have secrets, Savannah. Things in your past that you're not ready to share. That's all right. We all have chapters in our lives we'd rather keep closed. He took her hand in his touch warm and steady. But I want you to know that nothing you could tell me would change how I feel about you. And how do you feel? She whispered, barely daring to hope. Like I've been waiting my whole life to find you, he answered simply. Like everything that happened, you coming west, Whitcomb abandoning you, all of it was meant to bring you to the Double R, to me. Tears welled in Savannah's eyes. You can't know what you're saying. If you knew everything, then tell me, he urged. Whatever it is, Savannah, we can face it together. She took a deep, shuddering breath. It was time for the truth, however painful. Emma isn't my niece, she began, her voice trembling. She's my daughter. Quentin's expression didn't change. I know, he said gently. Savannah stared at him in shock. You know, he nodded. I suspected from the beginning. The way you look at her, the way you care for her, it's a mother's love, not an aunt's. And you never said anything. It wasn't my place to question your story, he replied. I figured you had your reasons for the deception. Taking courage from his acceptance, Savannah continued. Her father was the son of my mother's employer. He pursued me after my mother died when I was working as a maid in their house. She swallowed hard, the memory still painful. He promised marriage, but when I told him I was with child, he denied everything. His parents dismissed me without a reference. Quentin's hand tightened around hers, but he remained silent, letting her speak. The boarding house took me in, allowed me to work in the kitchen where I wouldn't be seen. After Emma was born, they helped me find a position as a mail-order bride. Mr. Whitcomb seemed kind in his letters, said he didn't mind that I was bringing my orphaned niece. It seemed like a chance at a new life, a fresh start. And then he abandoned you too, Quentin finished for her, his voice tight with anger on her behalf. Savannah nodded. Now you understand why we can't, she couldn't finish the sentence. No, I don't understand, Quentin said, his gaze intense. "What I understand is that you've faced more hardship in your young life than most people ever will, and you've done it with grace and courage. What I understand is that Emma is the child of a man who didn't deserve you, but she's also your daughter, and that makes her precious beyond words." He released her hand to cup her face gently between his palms. "What I understand, Savannah Mitchell, is that I'm falling in love with you. Both of you." The words she had never expected to hear from anyone, least of all this good, honorable man, broke the last of her defenses. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she whispered, "I don't deserve you." "You deserve so much more than I can give you," he corrected her, wiping away her tears with his thumbs. "But I'll spend every day trying if you'll let me." In answer, Savannah rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his in a kiss that held all the words she couldn't yet say. His arms came around her, strong and protective, as he returned the kiss with a tenderness that made her heart ache. When they finally broke apart, Quentin rested his forehead against hers. "We should get back," he murmured. "People will talk." "Let them," Savannah replied with a newfound confidence, making him laugh. They returned to the dance hand in hand, no longer caring who noticed or what conclusions might be drawn. Sarah caught sight of them from across the room and raised an eyebrow at their clasped hands and Savannah's flushed cheeks. Quentin gave his sister a slight nod, which was answered with a beaming smile of approval. Later, as they checked on Emma, sleeping peacefully in Mrs. Torres's gentle care, before heading back to the ranch, Savannah felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. There were still obstacles to face, prejudices to overcome, but for the first time she didn't have to face them alone. The weeks following the harvest dance were filled with a quiet joy for Savannah. Her relationship with Quentin deepened day by day, built on honest conversations and shared moments of laughter. To her surprise, his confession at the dance hadn't led to immediate pressure for marriage or further intimacy. Instead, he seemed content to court her properly, respecting her need for time and the boundaries she set. Each evening, after the day's work was done, they would sit on the porch of her cabin, sometimes talking for hours, other times simply enjoying the companionable silence as they watched the stars emerge. Occasionally, he would bring his guitar and play softly while she sang lullabies to Emma. These simple moments felt more precious to Savannah than any grand gesture could have been. The ranch hands, observing the developing relationship between their boss and the cook, maintained a respectful distance, though Savannah often caught them exchanging knowing glances when Quentin lingered in the kitchen after meals, or rode out of his way to bring her wildflowers he'd spotted on the range. Sarah, preparing to return to Denver as the school term approached, was delighted by the turn of events. "I knew it," she declared as she and Savannah folded laundry one afternoon. "From the moment he brought you home, I could see it in his eyes." "See what?" Savannah asked, smoothing a wrinkle from one of Quentin's shirts. "That look men get when they've found the one," Sarah explained. "Our father had it whenever he looked at our mother, even after 20 years of marriage, and now Quentin has it when he looks at you." Savannah blushed, but couldn't deny the observation. "He's a good man," she said softly, "better than I dared hope for." "He's the best," Sarah agreed, then added more seriously, "and he deserves to be happy. Our family has had its share of sorrow." "You mentioned a woman before," Savannah ventured, curiosity getting the better of her. "Someone Quentin was involved with." Sarah's expression clouded. "That's really his story to tell," she said after a moment. "But yes, there was someone a few years back. It didn't end well." Before Savannah could inquire further, Emma began to cry from her basket nearby, effectively ending the conversation. But the exchange left Savannah wondering about the shadows in Quentin's past that he had yet to share with her, Her opportunity came a few nights later. Sarah had departed for Denver that morning, leaving Savannah in charge of the household. After putting Emma to bed, she joined Quentin on the porch of the main house, where he sat cleaning his saddle by the light of a lantern. Quiet without Sarah, isn't it? He observed as she settled into the chair beside him. Yes, Savannah agreed. I'll miss her. She'll be back for Christmas, Quentin assured her. Wouldn't miss it for the world. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the rhythmic movement of Quentin's cloth over the leather and the distant lowing of cattle. Quentin, Savannah began hesitantly. There's something I've been wondering about. He looked up from his work, his expression open. What's that? You know everything about my past, the good and the bad, but there are parts of yours I know nothing about. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Sarah mentioned there was someone before. Quentin's hands stilled on the saddle. For a moment, Savannah feared she had overstepped, but then he set aside his work and turned to face her fully. Her name was Lucinda, he said quietly. Daughter of a rancher from the next county over. We courted for nearly a year, got engaged. The wedding was all planned. What happened? Savannah asked when he fell silent, Quentin's gaze fixed on some point in the darkness beyond the porch. There was a flash flood. Spring of '72. Lucinda was crossing Miller's Creek on her way to town when the water rose. Her horse made it to the other side, but she was swept away. His voice was flat, as if he deliberately drained all emotion from the telling. They found her body 2 days later, caught in some branches downstream. Oh, Quentin, Savannah breathed, reaching for his hand. I'm so sorry. He squeezed her fingers, a muscle working in his jaw. For a long time after, I couldn't see the point in anything. Threw myself into the ranch, worked from sunup to sundown until I was too exhausted to think. Sarah and my father worried themselves sick over me. How did you find your way back? She asked softly. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Time. The constant demands of the ranch. My family refusing to let me withdraw completely. He looked at her then, his blue eyes reflecting the lantern light. And eventually, I realized that Lucinda would have hated seeing me waste my life in grief. She was always so full of joy, so determined to squeeze every drop of living from each day. She sounds wonderful, Savannah said sincerely. She was, Quentin agreed. And for a long time I couldn't imagine feeling for anyone else what I felt for her. He paused, his gaze softening as it rested on Savannah's face. Until a certain stubborn, brave woman with auburn hair and a baby daughter walked into my life and turned everything upside down. The simple honesty of his declaration brought tears to Savannah's eyes. Quentin. I'm not telling you this to pressure you, he added quickly. Just to explain why it took me by surprise to these feelings, why I might seem cautious sometimes. We're both a little wounded, Savannah acknowledged. Both carrying memories we can't entirely set down. Yes, he agreed. But maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe it means we understand each other better than most. She nodded, finding wisdom in his words. Maybe it does. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. It's getting late. I should let you get some rest. As they stood to say good night, Savannah was struck by how naturally they had slipped into this dance of courtship, how right it felt to share both joy and pain with this man. Without overthinking, she rose on her tiptoes and kissed him softly. Thank you for telling me about Lucinda, she whispered against his lips. His arms came around her, holding her close for a moment before reluctantly releasing her. Good night, Savannah. Good night, Quentin. As autumn deepened, bringing cooler temperatures and golden light to the prairie, life at the Double R settled into a comfortable rhythm. Without Sarah's presence, Savannah took on full responsibility for the household, a role she found she enjoyed. She introduced new dishes to the ranch menu, organized a thorough cleaning of the main house, and even planted a small kitchen garden with hardy fall vegetables. Emma thrived in the ranch environment, growing stronger and more curious each day. She began to crawl, exploring her surroundings with determined concentration that made Savannah laugh and Quentin beam with pride, as if the child's accomplishments were somehow his to celebrate as well. The hands had fully accepted Savannah's presence by now, treating her with a mixture of respect and protective camaraderie. Old Pete, the foreman, had taken to bringing Emma little wooden toys he whittled in the evenings, while young Tommy, barely 18 and far from his own mother, often volunteered to rock Emma when Savannah's hands were full with dinner preparations. It was Tommy who brought the news one chilly November afternoon as Savannah was kneading bread dough in the kitchen. "Miss Mitchell," he called, knocking hesitantly at the back door. "Got a visitor for you." Savannah looked up, flour dusting her cheeks, to see a familiar figure standing behind Tommy, the station master from Willow Creek. Her heart sank at his solemn expression. "Pete," she greeted him, wiping her hands on her apron. "Is something wrong?" "Not wrong exactly, madam," Pete replied, twisting his hat in his hands. "But I've got a telegram here that came for you. Seemed important, so I brought it out myself rather than waiting for someone to come to town." Savannah accepted the yellow paper with trembling fingers. Who would be sending her a telegram? She had no family left, no connections from her past life that would reach out to her here. The message was brief, but shocking. "Miss Mitchell, stop. Harold Whitcomb, deceased, California. Stop left. Will naming you and child beneficiaries. Stop, please contact. Attorney Samuel, right, San Francisco. Stop, urgent matters to discuss. Stop." Savannah read it twice, trying to make sense of the words. Harold Whitcomb, the man who had abandoned her at the station, had died and apparently left her something in his will. "Bad news, madam?" Pete asked, concern evident in his weathered face. "No, not bad," she assured him, still dazed. "Just unexpected. Thank you for bringing it all this way." After Pete departed, Savannah sat at the kitchen table, staring at the telegram. What could Harold possibly have left her? And why would he name her in his will at all after the way he had treated her? The sound of boots on the porch roused her from her thoughts. Quentin entered, his face lighting up at the sight of her before quickly shifting to concern when he noticed her expression. "Savannah, what's wrong?" Wordlessly, she handed him the telegram. He read it quickly, his brow furrowing. "Whitcomb's dead," he said flatly, "and he's left you something." "Apparently," she confirmed, "though I can't imagine what or why." Quentin pulled out a chair and sat beside her, taking her flour-dusted hands in his. "What do you want to do?" The question caught her off guard. She had been so surprised by the telegram that she hadn't thought beyond the initial shock. I don't know. Contact the attorney, I suppose, though I can't imagine traveling to San Francisco with Emma." "You wouldn't have to go in person necessarily," Quentin pointed out. "We could wire this Samuel Wright, ask him to handle things by post." Savannah nodded slowly. "Yes, that makes sense, though I wonder what could be so urgent that he had me tracked down here." Quentin squeezed her hands gently. "Whatever it is, we'll handle it together, all right." His easy inclusion of himself in her affairs warmed her heart. "All right." The next day, Quentin rode into town to send a telegram to the San Francisco attorney, explaining that Savannah couldn't travel but requesting details about the inheritance. The response came 3 days later, brought once again by Pete, the station master. "Miss Mitchell, stop. Whitcomb owned deed to property in Willow Creek. Stop house and 20 acres. Stop also small bank account. Stop papers. Require signature. Stop. Will send by post. Stop condolences on your loss. Stop right. Stop a house." Savannah said in disbelief, after reading the telegram. Harold owned a house in Willow Creek. Quentin looked equally surprised. I never knew of Whitcomb owning property here. He always stayed at the boarding house when he was in town. 20 acres, Savannah murmured, trying to comprehend this unexpected turn of events. And a bank account. It changes things, Quentin said quietly, watching her face. Savannah looked up at him, suddenly understanding his concern. You think I'll leave the double R now that I have property of my own? It wasn't a question, but he nodded anyway. It would make sense. You'd be independent, beholden to no one. You could raise Emma on your own terms. The thought had crossed her mind fleetingly, but she was surprised by how little appeal it held. The double R had become home in a way no place had been since her parents died. And Quentin had become essential to her happiness in a way she had never anticipated. Is that what you want? She asked, studying his face. For me to leave? God, no, he replied with such vehemence that she couldn't help but smile. But I want you to have choices, Savannah. Real choices, not just making the best of limited options. His selflessness touched her deeply. My choice is here, she said softly, with you if you'll have us. The relief that washed over his features was almost comical. If I'll have you. Savannah, I've been trying to work up the courage to ask you to marry me for weeks. Her heart skipped a beat. You have? Of course I have, he said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. I love you, I love Emma. I want us to be a family officially, properly. Then ask me, she whispered, her eyes shining. Quentin blinked, momentarily caught off guard, then smiled. Without hesitation, he slid from his chair to one knee before her, taking her hands in his. Savannah Mitchell, I've loved you since the moment I saw you standing brave and alone at that train station. I've loved Emma since she first grabbed my finger with her tiny hand. I want to spend the rest of my life with both of you, building something beautiful together. Will you marry me? Tears of joy spilled down Savannah's cheeks as she nodded. Yes, Quentin Ross. Yes, I will marry you. He rose and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a tenderness that spoke of promises kept and a future shared. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and smiling, Savannah rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. What about the property? She asked after a moment. Harold's house, Quentin considered this. It's yours to do with as you please. We could sell it or keep it as an investment. Or, he hesitated. We could use it as a place for others who need help. Women in situations like yours, children who need a safe place. The suggestion was so perfectly aligned with Quentin's character, generous, thoughtful, always looking to turn fortune into something that benefited others, that Savannah felt her heart swell with love for him. That's a wonderful idea, she said, looking up at him with shining eyes. A place of new beginnings, like the double R was for me. The wedding took place on Christmas Eve, with Sarah returning from Denver to serve as Savannah's attendant and Emma, now nearly a year old, watching from her perch on Mrs. Torres's lap. The small church in Willow Creek was decorated with evergreen boughs and red ribbons, and candlelight cast a warm glow over the proceedings. Savannah wore a simple gown of ivory satin that Sarah had helped her select from a catalog, with her mother's lace veil that she had carried across the country in her trunk. Quentin, dressed in a new black suit, watched her walk down the aisle with an expression of such wonder and love that it brought tears to the eyes of even the most stoic ranchers in attendance. The ceremony was brief but heartfelt, with Reverend Thompson speaking movingly about second chances and the courage it takes to open one's heart after loss. When Quentin and Savannah exchanged vows, their voices were clear and certain, each word a promise neither took lightly. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the Reverend declared. What God has joined together, let no man put asunder. Quentin kissed his bride to the cheers and applause of friends and neighbors, even Mrs. Pemberton, who had gradually softened her stance as Savannah proved herself a respected member of the community. The celebration afterward was held at the Double R, with long tables set up in the barn, which had been cleared and decorated for the occasion. There was music and dancing, feasting and laughter, as the community came together to celebrate not just a wedding, but the triumph of love over circumstance. Later that night, after the guests had departed and Emma slept peacefully in her crib in the main house's nursery, formerly Sarah's room, Quentin carried Savannah over the threshold of their home. "Mrs. Ross," he said, setting her gently on her feet in their bedroom. "Welcome home." "I've been home since the day you found me at that station," she replied softly, reaching up to touch his face. "You and Emma are my home, Quentin." His kiss was tender and full of promise, the promise of a life shared, of children raised in love, of hardships faced together and joys multiplied in the sharing. 5 years later, the sound of children's laughter filled the spring air as Savannah stood on the porch of the main house, watching Quentin chase their 3-year-old son, James, around the yard. Emma, now 6, and the spitting image of her mother, was perched on the corral fence, solemnly observing as old Pete demonstrated how to properly groom her pony, a birthday gift from her adoptive father. Adoptive only in the legal sense, Savannah reflected as she rested a hand on her swollen belly. From the moment Quentin had first said, "Let me hold you both," at the train station, he had been Emma's father in every way that mattered. The formal adoption had taken place shortly after their wedding, but it had merely confirmed what they all already knew. The sound of a wagon approaching drew Savannah's attention. Sarah was arriving for her regular spring visit, bringing with her the latest books and news from Denver, where she now served as headmistress of a girls' school. But Sarah wasn't alone in the wagon. Beside her sat a young woman, probably no more than 18, clutching a bundle that Savannah instantly recognized as a baby. "Quentin," she called, and her husband looked up, following her gaze to the approaching wagon. He scooped James up in one arm and came to stand beside her, Emma abandoning her pony lesson to join them. "Sarah's brought someone," Savannah said softly. Quentin nodded, understanding immediately. It wasn't the first time Sarah had brought a young woman in need to Haven House, the home Savannah had established on Harold Whitcomb's former property. Over the past 5 years, dozens of women had found shelter, support, and a fresh start there. Another lost lamb for the fold. He asked, his voice gentle. "It appears so," Savannah agreed. They watched as Sarah helped the young woman down from the wagon, speaking to her in that reassuring way she had developed over years of teaching. The girl looked terrified, clutching her baby as if afraid someone might take it from her. "I'll go welcome them," Savannah said, starting down the steps. Quentin touched her arm, his expression serious. "Are you sure?" In your condition, she smiled at his concern. 6 months pregnant with their 3rd child, Savannah knew she presented quite a picture of maternal abundance. "I'm fine, Quentin. Besides, I think seeing me might reassure her more than anything else could." Understanding dawned in his eyes, and he nodded. "You're right, as usual. We'll come down in a minute. Give you ladies a moment first." As Savannah made her way toward the wagon, she thought about the journey that had brought her here from abandoned mail order, bride to beloved wife, mother, and pillar of the community. None of it would have been possible without the compassion of a dusty cowboy who had looked beyond appearances and prejudices to see her true worth. "Sarah," she called warmly. "Welcome home." Sarah embraced her sister-in-law tightly before turning to the young woman beside her. "Savannah, this is Rebecca. She needs our help." Rebecca looked up, fear and desperation clear in her young face as she clutched her infant to her chest. Savannah recognized that look she had worn it herself once, standing alone on a train platform with nowhere to go. "Hello, Rebecca," she said gently. "You and your baby are safe here." "I don't know what to do," the girl whispered, tears filling her eyes. "Everyone says I've ruined my life, that no decent man will ever want me now." Savannah smiled and gestured toward the house, where Quentin stood on the porch, James in his arms and Emma by his side, the picture of family contentment. "I once thought the same thing," Savannah told her, "but sometimes life has different plans than the ones we fear. Sometimes being left behind is just the beginning of the journey home." As if on cue, Quentin started down the steps, the children trailing after him like ducklings. The sight of him still made Savannah's heart skip a beat, even after all these years. "Come," she said, taking Rebecca's arm gently. "Let me introduce you to my husband. He has a particular soft spot for women with babies who need a helping hand." And as they walked together toward the family that had been forged from compassion and second chances, Savannah silently blessed the day a mail-order bride was left at the station with a baby, until a cowboy said, "Let me hold you both."